I'm back. I think there was an update to Retro Rewind, so I have to do this. Then I will post, because I am professional poster. Oh, maybe there wasn't an update. Okay. Anyway, it's been longer than I would have liked it to because of things, because of work, because of life, etc., etc. I have been tired, and so on. But today is big day, important day, very big, large day, larger than usual, in fact. At least by my estimations. Let's launch the game. Alright, very nice, very nice. Let's bring up the list to make sure I have, What's my Wii Remote doing? Okay, it has finally cooperated now that I have put the lightest bit of scrutiny on it. Great. No, don't do that. Okay. I can get rid of that for now. Okay. Alright. I feel like I've got something in my throat perennially. It's possible that it's just allergies. Allergies. Fuck, I can't even speak today. That shows you what kind of mental state I'm in right now. Allergies probably getting to me, making my nose all runny and shit. But I'm here to play Mario Kart, and I'm here to talk about, well, many things, as you could probably see by the title, and you know, my little jab at Canadians, whom I love. Thank you, Canada. You are our best comrades for deciding that America must suffer the consequences for its actions. You know, thank you. Why does it default to, like, Daisy? I don't know. I'll go with Yoshi again. Okay. Here we go. I guess I can start with the Canadian election, since that's going to be specifically relevant today. Thank you, BBC, for bringing up the question that I actually wanted to know. When will we get the results of the Canada election? Millions of Canadians are headed to the polls on Monday in a snap federal election that is largely focused on how the candidates would respond to President Trump's threats of tariffs, as well as his call to make Canada the 51st state. Yeah, so I've heard. Okay. Polls start at 7 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Daylight Time. When do we expect to know? The first polls close in Newfoundland and Labrador at 1900 hours EDT. Carney is a Chad? True. The most Chad liberal that is possible to have, probably. And the last polls in British Columbia close at 2200 EDT. So that's 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock Eastern Time, respectively. Okay, so we're not going to probably know who won until this evening. But regardless, I feel it appropriate to like, cover the elections since they're happening today. And also, Astroflick, it's been a while. Welcome back. The main parties of interest in this election are, I think, just the Liberals, the Conservatives, maybe the NDP. I think the NDP has gotten some play as well, and then like I don't know, fucking. Okay, hit that. Maybe the Greens, and then obviously I think the Bloc Québécois has been kind of in the discussion as well. Canada exists in a similar political party sort of space as the United Kingdom, funnily enough, where it is mostly a first past the post system, like, or I guess it's a hybrid system, where, how the fuck did I not get hit by anything? You have two big parties, like, you have two parties that are obviously the main contenders, that being the Liberal Party, headed currently by Mark Carney, after Justin Trudeau stepped down, thank fuck. And then the Conservative Party, who is currently, I believe, headed by Pierre Poilievre, you know, Trumpism light, which has sort of backfired now that Trump has announced that he has ended our friendship with all of our allies and stuff. Go to Canada often. The change from the last few months has been insane. Conservatives still fumbled hard, even if they win. Oh yeah, what's kind of crazy, what makes this interesting to me, is that I think that, like, the general expectation is that, well, not Labour, this is not the UK, thank you. I apologize to Canadians out there. The Liberals are expected now to be, like, the main contender in this election. Like, they're expected to get the biggest returns in this election. Because, yeah, the Conservatives fucking blew it really, really hard. You know? You know, since fascism as an ideology of capital is international, because capital is international, that means wherever capital is based, for the most part, it is going to export its sentiment with fascism across the world. Since America is probably the most capital captured country on Earth, you know, and was for the longest time the wealthiest country on Earth, you know, America is going to be the exporter of global fascism for as long as that is the case. So we basically exported our brand of fascism to other countries. Fascists in other countries sound like fascists in America to varying extents. And what happened, what made the Conservatives fumble so hard, is that they're part of that far-right coalition. Even if all the Conservatives in Canada aren't all in on the joke, per se, you know, they go with very similar rhetorical lines to what the American far-right does. So when the American far-right starts alienating every single other country on Earth, the far right in all these other countries is going to be ostracized from politics, you know, like, kind of procedurally, you know, and from the minds of the public, because, like, when America alienates everybody and the far right in every other country resembles the far right in America, people are not going to like the far right in their country. That's going to polarize people against the conservative parties and the far right parties of various European and other, like, North American and South American countries, because they sound too much like Americans, and, you know, they know what America has been doing to them, you know? And such is the case in Canada. America becoming Russia helps global liberalism. I would say it does kind of, like, it breathes a little bit more life into what's left of liberalism on the world stage. And for a certain, like, in some ways, I'm not sure how much that's a good or a bad thing, right? I still do believe that liberalism is a dying ideology, and, like, there's going to be this process by which liberals either sort of fold into fascism with a declining sort of neoliberal status quo, or they kind of move towards socialism. They start forming a more liberal socialist or market socialist bloc to try to formulate, you know, an answer to the dying neoliberalism of the world, and you sort of get, like, you know, that's the new ideological divide and stuff like that. I don't know. Right now, it's still kind of early, I guess. I don't know what side of that the Canadian Liberals and Mark Carney fall on. Although I can say that, you know, regardless of what eventually happens, it is good that right now fascism is polarizing as many people as possible against itself, including Mark Carney and the Canadian Liberals. Now, the Canadian Liberals, obviously, they have a lot of problems, you know. But they're not the Conservatives, so I guess, like, you know, we're kind of hoping that maybe they are, we're hoping that, like, the Canadian Liberals are the majority, or at least can form a coalition government. And we're also hoping that they're susceptible to pressure from left-leaning groups under Mark Carney, more so than they were under Justin Trudeau, because Canada actually is having some similar economic woes to America in the form of, like, the housing crisis and stuff like that. You know? That's the general state of things, I feel, on this election. What happens if no party wins a majority? Well, they would have to coalition build with another party to have a majority. If the Liberals win, Mark Carney would not need to be sworn in again. Yeah. Although, obviously, for Mark Carney, I think I have some more optimism than for Justin Trudeau. Because Justin Trudeau was actually as much as you can really have this, Justin Trudeau was a liberal ideologue in that he would actually... he kind of doubled down on some of the problems that the country experienced during the pandemic and shortly thereafter, you know? Like, notoriously cracked down on a lot of labor organizing. And while Mark Carney is still a neoliberal, he seems to be much more, much more of a nerd, basically. Which means he's not as good in front of the cameras, but... I don't know. Maybe, you know, if the ghost of John Maynard Keynes, like, whispers something in his ear, he's more likely to listen and be like, yes, maybe we should invest in more, like, social housing and stuff. Maybe that would be good, actually. You know? As opposed to, like, it's like one brand of neoliberalism versus another one, or one brand of, like, liberal capitalism versus another one, right? Where it's like, yes, we want workers to be able to afford the things that they produce so that money can keep flowing in the economy, as opposed to Trudeau, like, doubling down on every economic excess of the Canadian capital class and shit like that. It's like, no, actually, workers must go back to work. You will pay $2 million for a starter house or some shit. I don't know. I'm speaking in a lot of generalities because I don't know Canadian economics as well as American economics. Nice. Oh, dude, this guy's on the bullet bike. What a homie. I guess that's all I have to say about the Canadian elections. So I guess who we hope doesn't win are the Canadian Conservatives, but it actually does seem like with the amount of scrutiny they've been getting from the public, it's unlikely, I think, that the Conservatives get a majority or even would be able to build a coalition after this election is all said and done, right? Precisely because of how they've been sort of the MAGA light, while the United States has been forsaking all of its allies, or all of its, I guess, former allies now. And I think that political image is going to sort of be transferable onto how other political parties see the Canadian Conservatives, right? Like, even if they win enough seats that they could build a coalition, like a majority coalition government, or something like that with a couple other parties, I don't think that certain parties in Canada would be super willing to work with the Conservatives because, like, well, I mean, you guys are kind of like pro-Trump and stuff. Like, that's what you guys built yourself off of in, like, over the past few years. I don't know if we want to be associated with that, you know? So, you know, big whoop. We want the less conservative big party to win. We want the more conservative big party to lose. And ultimately, I think those are the two most, like, plausible outcomes, is that one party or the other gets, like, the lion's share of the seats that are up for election. You know, the NDP and the Greens and the Bloc Québécois are presences in Canadian politics, more than any third party really is at the federal level in American politics. But I don't think it's terribly likely that any of them is in a position to rival the Conservatives or the Liberals in terms of their size, you know? They would probably be bit players, whichever way the election goes. And funnily enough, as much as that is kind of reminiscent of a first past the post, like two-party system, it is actually a lot more functional than a two-party system. Because in the United States, you have the Democratic Party and the Republican Party at the federal level. You literally don't have any third parties. You have like the occasional independent senator or representative, like enough just to count on one hand. Which means that it's functionally, what was it? I think it was the president of Kenya said that America is a one-party state, but they have two of them. You know, it's kind of like that, where if one party has a majority, they get to just do what they want unopposed. Whereas in Canada and in the UK, this is also the case. The smaller parties, so the NDP, the Greens, the Bloc Québécois in Canada, or the Greens and the Liberal Democrats in the UK or whatever, at least have enough bargaining power that they can exact some concessions from the larger parties that they might not otherwise be willing to give. For example, let's say, like, as an example, the Greens are, in Canada could be, like, they have a couple seats, enough to put the Liberals over the threshold of having a majority, so they squat up together. But the Greens are like, hey, we will work with you, but in exchange, we actually want you to implement some of our policy priorities for, like, transforming, starting to transform the energy grid into something more eco-friendly, right? If you want our help, you have to do that for us. And so that gives them some leverage over the Liberals to be like, all right, look, we're willing to do that. We're willing to give you that concession. And in exchange, you work with us and support our political priorities and stuff. Same thing with, like, maybe if the NDP were in a similar position and starts to, like, decides to flex its more social democratic muscles, like, hey, we need to devote more funding to these mental health services. We need to sort of patch up some of these social safety net gaps and whatnot. Or you need to start expanding these education programs or whatever it is, right? You could pick a lot of examples of things that a smaller party would support. And if they have, like, just enough of a presence to make or break a majority coalition for the Liberal Party, then the Liberal Party would be pressured to be like, you know what? Yeah, okay, we'll do that. UK and Canada have far superior systems to the US, so I'm actually so jealous. I am similarly jealous to, Canada and the UK, but as well to, like, the coalition governments of Europe, your Frances, your Germanys, your Spains. Structurally speaking, it's like you have the pure first past the post, which is actually pretty rare. The United States is the most notable example. Then you have the, like, halfway between first past the post and a coalition government system, which would be like Canada and the UK. And then you have a proper coalition government system, which would be Spain, France, Germany, the Netherlands. I believe Ireland is an example of this too. So really, I would really like that. But yes, what Canada and the United Kingdom have is a far better alternative. Anyways, that's where one of my little that's where some nerd shit comes out for me, is that it's like, oh yeah, so these political systems, they can actually work even if there's two big parties. The little parties have some weight to them, and that's because there are some elements in which it's not a purely first past the post voting system. The larger parties are carried a lot by historical inertia, but ultimately, the percentage of votes that you get determines the kind of seats that you get. Just more or less directly, depending. But anyways, that's all the fun stuff that I had to say about the election. I do want to, like, I guess to be a negative Nancy, bring it down just a little bit. Since the parties in Canada, as far as I know, are mostly, like, anywhere from far right to, like, center right conservative or liberals, there isn't much representation of of socialists in the Canadian government, so I wouldn't expect any of the more glaring economic issues to be fixed under a liberal government in Canada following this election, right? You know, it's still at the end of the day, it's still just like the Liberal Party versus the Conservative Party, right? For something like that, you'd probably have to I don't know. In the United States, I would say you'd have to like work with very local level socialist orgs or pursue much more unconventional means of putting political pressure on politicians and parties and stuff like that. But I guess in a hopeful sense, maybe you could, if you could get the proper amount of like anti-America sentiment going, you could generate a considerable amount of political will to do basically anything. Kind of like how I've heard this said that like during the Cold War, like, yeah, if you put enough money and anti-Soviet like if you have enough like national pride and anti-Soviet sentiment pointed in the general direction of a problem, that problem's going to get solved eventually, right? You know, so hopefully that's a tool that can be used to that advantage of activist groups and certain more active elements of any given political party in Canada, but we'll see. A lot of this amounts to a big fat we'll see. That shock actually came at a really good time to save me from that POW, funnily enough. That POW was gonna mess me up if that shock didn't slow me down enough to land on the boost panel. Patriotism can be a very valuable tool. Oh yeah, because it's like it's an animating force. Like, yeah, if you love your country, make sure to do this. You know, there are all sorts of PSAs during the Cold War and during the Second World War about like, if you're a true American, make sure you participate in this patriotic carpooling effort with your neighbors and whatever, and like all sorts of rationing programs and whatever invoked patriotism as a binding sort of identity to convince people to do things that would potentially sacrifice a lot of the convenience that they would otherwise have in their life to achieve a broader political goal that in the long run turned out to be very beneficial. Well, I'm sorry, King Boo, but, you know, I had to do it to him. It's just, you know, patriotism as a tool, like, it requires a degree of top-down sort of organization. Because otherwise you get a typical sort of dissonance where a bunch of different people have conflicting narratives, all motivated by the same thing, seemingly. Patriotism needs to be at the core of the left-wing movement, especially when fighting an entity like MAGA. Yeah, I think I agree. You know, just like as an aesthetic flourish, if nothing else, right? We've seen throughout history a lot of successful protest movements and revolutions have been successful because they wave the banner of their own country, you know? This is not me going on like a Pat Soak arc or whatever the fuck, right? But like there for like the anti-Soviet protests of the 80s or even for like anti-fascist protests in countries that are victim to authoritarian dictatorship in places like Algeria, Tunisia, you know, Israel, to back when those still happened, you would see people flying the flag of their own country. People at anti-government protests in Israel, in Tunisia, would be flying the Israeli flag, the Tunisian flag, or, you know, if they were in Algeria, the Algerian flag. They'd be flying their own flag because it's like, we are the true voice of the country. It gives the movement a kind of legitimacy in a world that is dominated by the nation-state form, right? Just from like a tactical perspective, it's good strategy. And of course, like if you're attending a protest, like in America, right? If you're attending a pro-immigration protest and whatnot, right? That's not like to say that you shouldn't have a Mexican flag or you know, Venezuelan, Cuban, and Guatemalan flags, or whatever, the country of origin for people that they're trying to protect is. Like, you can still have those flags and whatever, but it's very important to emphasize, like, yeah, we are pro-America, we love this country, so we are trying to change it in a positive sort of way. I feel, sometimes it gets lost in the sauce with liberals and lefties. Particularly, I think in the United States, this is a problem, more so than other places. It's interesting, like, left-wing movements in other countries are more willing to fly the flag of their own country when compared to left-wing movements in the United States specifically, from what I have seen. But, it's something that I typically, like, it's sort of like in another time, I feel like that sort of thing would be more deserving of the forefront than like right now. Just because of like how much shit is happening. It's almost like there's a lot it's just more important that you show up in massive numbers. Rather than, like, optimizing those sorts of tactics, Though, obviously, like, yeah, if you can, bring your American flag and shit to the anti-government protest. You get what I mean. I think I've belabored the point enough. It's, you know what, to put it simply, there's a saying that goes that when fascism comes to America, it will be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross, and I think the same should be true of socialism. And that's kind of where I'll leave it. Because the core point of that saying with fascism is that it will, like, it will use those as an aesthetic flourish, irrespective of how much it actually cares about either of them, right? It's a political tool. And so we would do well to use that political tool as well. Anyways. Now let's oh boy. It's is it tariff time? I think it's tariff time. Okay. So, up until now, the results of tariffs, because it's been like so back and forth whether or not the government has decided we're actually doing the tariffs or whether it's just a joke, which at its core I maintain it is still a grift. It's been hard to tell what the concrete implications of these sorts of tariffs will look like. But now we have some information about shipments and inventory and how tariffs will affect that. I've seen this from a couple different people. I don't know the original source that they're getting it from. I haven't had really the time to look for that. I'll try to verify it if this becomes a segment. But from what I've heard, the yeah, I love that's true. We are pro dollar devaluation and textile manufactories in Trump's America. Many such cases. It's funny. My granddad actually worked in a textile factory in the United States. Like, he was a career man too. Worked there his whole life. Anyways, look, that's not entirely germane to the discussion here. So evidently, the last ship from China will dock on the West Coast on April 29th, which is tomorrow at the time of recording this. I'm recording this on April 28th. And the last Chinese ship will arrive on the East Coast on May the 10th. After that, no more shit from China. No more shipments. after May the 10th will arrive in the United States. And that's really not good, because that means that basically anything that says made in China on it after May 10th will definitely stop appearing on store shelves, or whatever the like time frame after May 10th that it typically takes from shipping at the port to get to inventory on the shelves. It could be like a week or a month, even somewhere in that time frame between the last ship arriving at port and that stuff getting to the store shelf. But that's about when we're going to start seeing the shortages start. In fact, from I have a article here from, what was it, investors.com, you know, one of those financial news outlets that's situationally useful to refer to. Firm predicts empty shelves and recession by June. So that tracks. If the last ship is getting here in late April to early May, then yeah, by June, we're going to start seeing store shelves being empty. We're going to experience proper shortages of goods from China. We get a lot of shit from China. But the big kicker is that because of how international shipping works, because of how interconnected commerce is, it's not just stuff from China that comes over on ships that leave from Chinese ports, right? Those ships are not like, it's not like a one-stop thing, right? China is a stopping point for a number of other shipments that come from countries that have to travel a certain shipping route, which means Vietnam, Cambodia, you know, anywhere in Southeast Asia, really, Taiwan as well. Sometimes, I think. Any of the countries in that area, potentially even some stuff from India and that part of the world, that gets shipped east instead of like going on the western trade route, like around Africa or something. So basically anything that stops in China at any point that like gets onto a Chinese ship, which is more than just stuff that's made in China, is no longer going to be coming to the United States as of like basically right now, but that's going to start being reflected on store shelves on like in late May to early June. So made in Vietnam, made in Cambodia, made in Thailand, you know, made in China, made in, you know, wherever. Even stuff that's made in like Bangladesh or India, we're going to stop seeing that stuff in the United States. You know, it truly is it's going to be like a series of shortages, probably to rival the Great Depression, you know? And that means mostly like the kinds of goods that we're not going to receive anymore are day-to-day goods, you know, consumer goods, textiles, school supplies, office supplies, all that sort of stuff. A lot of stuff that like, you know, you would go and just casually sort of order because you need a replacement or something on Amazon. We're not going to really have that stuff anymore. You know? This is the face of economic collapse. Asset management firm Apollo Global Management forecasts trucking demand stopping in about a month, resulting in empty shelves and a recession this summer as President Trump's trade war policies are bringing about changes in global shipping not seen since the coronavirus pandemic, with ocean carriers readying for a significantly reduced demand, according to analysts and observers. Specifically in focus, U.S. trade with China amid the back and forth over tariffs and possible deals. The uncertainty has led to a decrease in shipping volumes from China to North America, with cancellations currently at 50%, according to global logistics firm Flexport. The reports as of last week. National Retail Federation, whose members include Walmart and Target and others, forecast earlier this month that the U.S. import cargo volume will fall at least 20% year over year in the second half of 2025 as U.S. companies pause orders from China. That's a very optimistic estimate. At least I think so. Big retailers that rely on China-made goods like Amazon, Walmart, and Target are also set to feel impact from Trump's trade war and the shipping changes. Yeah, that's something that I'm well, worrying about, thinking about, is that basically every store in America that stocks inventory uh, relies to some degree on Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, and like Cambodian, whatever, manufactured goods, just because it's so cheap to outsource labor there and to requisition inventory from stuff that gets shipped here and stuff like that. In addition to all the like Amazon stuff that, like, granted, these are cheap, low quality items, right? But regardless, they are easy to get. So easy, in fact, that drop shipping businesses can like deal in the purchase and sale of this stuff as middlemen without even having any inventory to begin with, right? Like, all of that is going to be hit incredibly hard. I feel like, if anything, it seems like the big box stores and Amazon are kind of going to be made into shells of their former selves, precisely because of how much of their business model relies on mass-produced cheap goods available for stocking on their shelves or, you know, in their online catalogs from China, you know? Because China manufactures a shit ton of stuff, as do countries in Southeast Asia and in South Asia, where labor is extremely cheap, where the workers don't get paid jack shit, and where, where effectively where America outsourced all the jobs to in the 1980s and 90s, you know? That shock happened just in time again to prevent me from getting squished. One mushroom. Kind of awkward, but good use of mushroom nonetheless. So if you need school supplies, it may be wise to buy them now. Basically, is what I'm saying from a individual like advice guru level. I don't know. Or make sure you have some sturdy shit on hand. Yeah. Yeah, that and stuff like this was always going to be the result of the tariffs, right? To the extent that they stayed in place. Tariffs are designed to limit the presence of international business and industry in your country. And that can be useful in certain instances if you are a country in the global south that is very heavily subject to economic predation by a country like America. You know, if you are a country in sub-Saharan Africa, you know, extremely economically underdeveloped, tariffs can be a useful tool. It is going to hurt, but it's going to be useful in the long term, because the more you develop a local industrial base and the more you can dictate industrial production on your own terms, the less leverage that the IMF and other like international businesses have to basically create an extremely lopsided trade relationship, not just in the sense of like they sell more stuff to you than they buy or whatever, but in the sense of like truly tying your country on the end of a string by like draining wealth from you, you know, like the way this happens in a lot of third world countries is that there is a manufacturing base there, but it is owned by foreign companies or even just companies that have a presence internationally, whereby the capital sort of leaves the country. It's an extractive relationship. And that's what tariffs are designed to prevent. But we benefit from that extractive relationship. We're on the other end of it as the United States. We're the one country in the world where tariffs would not be useful in this way. You know? Unless you mean the auto industry, but I mean, I kind of hate the American auto industry because, you know, the American auto industry makes cars to be debt traps, and the cars are also like not that great, and they're all like proprietary shit. So, you know. So, the tariffs in America seem to, are doing exactly what tariffs do. The problem is that America was already on top. The tariffs are just going to hurt. And there's no long-term gain that the tariffs could possibly have for the United States that would outweigh the position that we were in before implementing them. We were the global hegemon already. We didn't need an economic boost from tariffs. We benefited from international trade more than just about any other country on Earth. Also, the reason that Trump said that he wanted to do tariffs, part of the thing, like, one of the million reasons that they said for, like, doing tariffs, in addition to, like, oh, we need to devalue the dollar or something like that, which is surprisingly transparent. They said, like, oh, we want to bring manufacturing jobs back. But, like, manufacturing jobs kind of suck in the way that they exist overseas. Like, the only way you could do manufacturing in the United States to be economically viable is if labor conditions were as bad or worse than they are in a country like Bangladesh, China, or Vietnam. Hell, it'd have to actually be a lot worse than countries like China, because as much manufacturing as China currently does, they actually are also starting to have this problem where, this economic problem where, labor in China is actually starting to get more expensive. So they're like, well, we want to, exploit workers, but our standards are too high. We can't exploit them hard enough for business to still be profitable in doing certain types of manufacturing. So they even have to outsource it and stuff, It would either be that, like sweatshop conditions, which are not good, and nobody should be expected to take a job like that, or it would manufacturing would be incredibly expensive and wildly, like, out of step with people's incomes. It genuinely, it would be, whichever way you go, people who work a manufacturing job in this country, if the tariffs are for what the administration says that they are for, anybody in manufacturing wouldn't really be able to afford the goods that they manufacture, right? In the one scenario, if they're paid proper wages, wages still aren't high enough because costs get, like, so inflated by, the price of manufacturing in America, and like the return for shareholders and all that shit. You have good wages, but they're just not high enough to buy anything. Or if you have sweatshop conditions and you're still manufacturing them for cheap, then congratulations, you've manufactured them for cheap, and there are some people who aren't working those jobs that can afford those goods. But anybody working that job to produce those goods wouldn't be able to afford them on store shelves because they get paid less than what the goods are actually worth to make them. It's a economic conundrum for which tariffs are incapable of providing a good answer. Bringing manufacturing back to the United States doesn't really solve anything, because the issue isn't, like, the nature of the issue being experienced where small town America is being hollowed out, right? And all of the other negative consequences of outsourcing manufacturing to begin with are a product of the relationship between labor and capital. When you spend money at one of these big box stores, the money doesn't stay in the community. Functionally, like, the same thing that is happening to the third world on an international scale is happening to small town America on a domestic scale, and you can't fix that by bringing back manufacturing, because that doesn't fundamentally alter the relationship where money just constantly leaves the small towns and stuff. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but, like, what I'm trying to say is that the problem here is global capitalism and the concentration of capital into these small nexuses of the capital class, which tend to live in cities, but, obviously that doesn't mean that any given person in the city is living it up, And what needs to happen is that, like, there needs to be a substantial reinvestment both into the urban working class and the rural working class, and businesses need to be taken out of the hands of like the fucking shareholders and put into the hands of the workers. Yo, what's up, bro, the boss? That's like what happened. Well, we got some preliminary information for what the tariffs are going to look like. And what the tariffs look like are no new ships from China coming into port by mid-May. And by June, store shelves will start to be completely empty. And I was just explaining how, like, tariffs are kind of like the fascist, faux populist answer to economic woes brought on by capitalism, right? Because tariffs don't, like, fundamentally change the domestic relationship between labor and capital. Accelerationism at its finest. Yeah, that is true. For all this stuff that I've said in the past, like, 20 minutes sounds really grim. It is very important to note that accelerationists are eating so good right now. Accelerationists have never eaten this good probably in history. You know? On the one hand, oh no, the economic system is on its way to total collapse. On the other hand, oh yeah, the economic system is on its way to total collapse because, you know, the economic system is capitalism. You know? And it would be good, I think, for that set of relationships to collapse as early as possible so that it can't, like, drag out and do a shit ton more damage to everybody and everything. Oh no, did I get disconnected or something? Oh no, I have been disconnected. Did it, like, a update come out or something? What is happening? Oh. Okay. Oh, dude. What's up, 1v3? Welcome. Welcome back. How's being an American treating you? We'll be right back after these messages. No, it's treating me like shit, kind of. I got to, just to re-up you on where we are, I got some, yesterday I saw some stuff about, some details about, like, what the tariffs are actually going to mean. No new Chinese ships coming into the West Coast after April 29th, which is tomorrow. No new Chinese ships coming into the East Coast after May 10th, which is less than 2 weeks from now. And then by June, store shelves are going to start being empty of, like, anything that was made in China, or even stuff that was made in Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand, because that stuff actually has to stop in China and get loaded onto Chinese ships in order to get shipped to America. But it's not just Chinese goods that aren't getting shipped to America, it's anything that gets shipped on a Chinese ship that's no longer coming to America. So, you know, that's how being an American is treating me right now. You know? Okay. Unable to connect to Retro WFC. On the bright side, though, total autism victory. Did you guys hear about this? They're not doing the autism registry anymore. I'm gonna go see if there's, like, an update or something. Yeah, rip indeed. No more cheap shit. Luckily, I actually am like, as an individual, I'm incredibly frugal. Like, I don't spend that much money on anything except the occasional, like, every few months $5 Steam purchase and, like, groceries. You know? I did not, Lamau. Yeah, I am I learned from my grandparents on this one. You know, thankfully my grandparents were around long enough to impart like financial advice onto my parents and me before the debt economy grabbed me particularly by the balls. And their philosophy was don't live beyond your means. And so I've taken that to heart, and so I do not intend to live beyond my means. I intend to live fully within my means. If I can't buy something, that means I can't buy it. I'm not gonna like do some credit card like literally. It is to the extent that I literally do not want to get a credit card if I don't have to, because it's just a debt machine, and I don't want that like at all. But yeah, total autism victory, at least for now. From Autistic Self Advocacy Network. HHS walks back autism registry plans. Hell yeah. On Monday, April 21st, so last week, the Department of Health and Human Services announced plans to collect federal and private health data for upcoming autism studies. NIH Director Dr. J. Bhattacharya also announced that NIH would create a new disease registry focused on autism. This announcement led to public outcry and alarm across the autism community. Absolutely, it did. I was part of that. I'm doing my part. Uh, Yesterday, Thursday, April 24th. Okay, so this was written on Friday. HHS said in written statements to multiple journalists that they will not be creating an autism registry, contrary to Dr. Bhattacharya's statements. This is positive news, but given the administration's previous actions and comments, particularly those related to autism over the past several weeks, we are not assuming that there's no longer anything to worry about. We will continue to monitor this research initiative and any other autism-related administration efforts with extreme vigilance. HHS reversal on creating an autism registry shows that even when it seems that no one is listening, your voice matters. Absolutely yes. Tell them, Autism Self Advocacy Network. You guys need to know that shit. Your voice does matter. They care about you. We care about you. We, the great American autistic community, care about you. Public outcry seems to have caused HHS to change course and walk away from some of the most concerning aspects of the project. Right now, HHS does not appear to be creating a centralized list of autistic people that could be used against our community. We will keep the community involved and provide updates if there is any indication that might happen. If you're feeling scared, know that we're fighting by your side for your rights, privacy, health, and safety. We encourage you to join us. Thank you, ASAN. Nice. RFK Jr. defeated by autism yet again. We can't keep getting away with this, despite the fact that we clearly keep getting away with it. Yes. Like they said, that doesn't mean there's like nothing to worry about and whatever, but we have formed the Rainbow Coalition in time. They can't get us yet. You'll never take me alive. If they tried to put the autistic people on a train to the fucking death camp, to Auschwitz, the sequel, we would simply commandeer the train, because autistic people love trains. This is well known. Extremely rare bit of good news, which was quite nice to see. Please let Retro WFC be online. I'm back from the dead. Autistic bros on a train right now. Hope my home isn't a death camp. Oh, don't worry, it's not. Unless your home is like 123 Death Camp Drive or something, which would be a weird address to have, but you know. It has a few people online. Ooh. I do also have, there's like a follow-up to another thing. Okay. Where is it? Here it is. This is kind of a I told you so moment for there's a surprising number of doubters for the video where like I talked about, what is it, Klarna, and how they partnered with DoorDash. It's like, yeah, now you can finance your groceries and your fucking restaurant order. From CNBC, apparently people are actually financing the groceries and the restaurant orders. More Americans are financing groceries with buy now, pay later loans, and more are paying those bills late, survey says. Survey says? Sorry, I every time I see survey says, I always think of Steve Harvey on Family Feud. I can't not. It's very ingrained into my brain. I will never give this up. This is one aspect of being an American that I will cling to. Yeah. I'm your man, Steve Harvey. Yeah, that's true. We need to bring the specter. The specter of Steve Harvey does not yet haunt Europe, but soon it will. It is imperative that we bring the specter of Steve Harvey to Europe, specifically so he can haunt Europe with his Mr. Potato Head looking ass. Anyways. Survey says crippling debt. That's what the survey says. Seriously though. A Lending Tree survey found that 25% of buy now, pay later users are funding grocery purchases with loans, up from 14% in 2024. So apparently there was like already some people doing this, but now more people are doing this. Which is not good. Me when I like, me when I don't know anything about economics. Chat, is this good? Is it good that like everybody is taking out debt for everything, including buying food? Chat, is this good? Survey said 41% of respondents said they made a late payment on a BNPL. That's buy now, pay later loan in the past year. Ow. Up from 34% the year prior. Nice. The figures are the latest evidence that some consumers are having trouble affording essentials such as groceries under the pressure of high prices and interest rates. Here's the thing, right? Interest rates shouldn't have any bearings on groceries. Interest rates affect loans. The fact that people are being affected at all by interest rates when they purchase groceries means that people are going into debt over groceries. You know? Like, the issue there is that they have to take a loan in the first place, not if they're paying on time, right? Because taking a loan for something is always more expensive than buying it outright. It's just more immediately available to somebody who can't afford it but still needs it. It's like it's an inelastic demand thing. You know, there's always going to be demand for food. If you don't eat, you die. If you die from being hungry, you die in real life. You know, this is it's a thing that's known to happen, right? Conservative Party winning it. Tesla, welcome to chat. We actually don't know who's winning yet. I think the Liberal Party's actually predicted to win those elections, but I talked about that earlier. I would genuinely be very surprised if the Conservative Party gained like the lion's share of the seats in that election, you know. But right now I'm talking about how this is a follow-up to another thing that I did. How people are now going into debt over groceries. Which is not good. I don't know if anybody knows as economics expert here, but it's typically not good when people have to go into debt for purchases that are on the order of like double digit or triple digit dollars. Like that's not good when people go into debt for that. And this is according to some data from like CNBC or something. It's just man, it's like, it's just more of the economic hell that started in the fucking 70s and 80s or whenever the fuck credit cards were invented, and like the debt economy has just come to encompass everything. Yeah, I died. Hello, Gotron, welcome back. I'm only gonna low trick this one. There we go. I would take what CNBC takes with a grain of salt. It is true that I don't know like what kind of what the data pool is that they're using, but I have no reason to believe that they're outright lying with the numbers that they've provided, right? Like they said, oh, we conducted a survey of people that use this BNPL model or something like that, and last year I think it was like 30% of them said that they were making late payments. Here, let me scroll up to the number again. Yeah, 41% of respondents to the survey this time said that they had made a late payment on a buy now, pay later loan within the past year, as opposed to 34% the year prior. So, like, again, like I said, it's hard to gauge like what exactly this data set is, but regardless, there is a worrying trend here that an increasing number of people are going into debt over their groceries, which again, like, it's an incredibly small thing to go into debt for. You're not going to get me on this, Tesla. I know, like, you want to be Mr. Both Sides, like, lying with statistics, everything is fine, actually, but there's more than enough, like, statistical literacy on this channel for you to look at that. I know that these are all issues here. Right? In fact, if anything, CNBC is a right-wing news media outlet. If anything, their interest is to make this crisis seem smaller than it is, for the sake of people's worries not being stoked, and for like the money to keep churning, basically. That's the purpose of the debt economy, by the way. In case anybody didn't know, the reason that the debt economy developed, that's because it is. The reason that the debt economy developed is because there was there was sort of a turning point where, like, people could no longer afford stuff. It became an increasing problem. First, it was houses and cars and the big purchases. Then it started to get more into the small stuff. And in fact, there were entire systems of consumerism and purchasing that were sort of designed to incentivize people to spend money even when they didn't have money to spend. So how do you fix that? Well, what you could do is try to amend the relationship between profit seeking and spending money so that people have more money to spend. You could try to increase wages, lower the cost of living, make it more feasible to people spend money because they have money to spend. Or what you could do is you could simply make it easier for people to go into negative numbers on what money they have, which would also sort of stave off the problem. It would keep the economy moving. People would still be spending money. Money would still be circulating, right? But at the same time, you would avoid addressing at all the relationship, like where wages are starting to stagnate, and like you basically don't address the underlying problem that causes things to be unaffordable in the first place. You simply make it easy to, quote unquote, buy the unaffordable thing. In parentheses, go over to go into debt over it, right? And it is a bad sign. This is what I'm reading this CNBC article for, right? Usually I don't go to CNBC because it's fucking stock market bullshit, right? You know, it is a favorite of the sort of business class segment of the far right. Is that there's a very worrying trend here that people are starting to need to go into debt over things that have fewer and fewer zeros on the end of a dollar amount, right? Like, think of how much a house costs, several $100,000, right? That's a lot of money. Think of how much a car costs, tens of thousands, right? 5 and 6 digit numbers. People start, have to go into debt over that, even if they've saved a lot of money for it. Then you start looking at things that are somewhat less expensive. You know, maybe a used car that you could get in single-digit thousands, or like some really nice furniture, single-digit thousands. Now, like that on its own is also worrying. People have to go into debt for that sometimes. Now, groceries and restaurant orders are really worrying, because even if you are buying groceries for multiple people, you're still only spending in the triple-digit dollar numbers. That's only 2 zeros after a digit, right? That's only 3 decimal places. Then you take into account that groceries and restaurant orders aren't always bought in a group or over a long period of time. We're looking at potentially people starting to have to go into debt for double-digit dollar purchases. That is a 5-alarm fire if you are economically illiterate. But obviously, Tesla, as you've shown, you're not economically literate because you don't understand anything that I'm talking about. And what you're interested in is signaling that you're smarter than everybody else. And I might actually have to put you in the hole for like 5 minutes if you keep being obnoxious, but for now it's fine. That's what I'm trying to get at, is that, first of all, in the mid like 20th century, people had to go into debt for really big things, 6-digit purchases, right? Hundreds of thousands, and the tens of thousands, right? Then, as time goes on, 90s, 2000s, people start having to go into purchases for smaller things, high 4-digit $1,000 purchases, right? You know, cars, houses, college, those are all 5, 6-digit numbers, very worrying on their own. But it's not like, we're not quite at like the crisis flashpoint if people are going into debt for something that costs like a year's salary. Would it help if I peel an orange that looks like Trump and eat it? Yes, you're manifesting the correct vibes. This would help. Right? But then now the threshold for what people can't afford is lowering considerably, right? This is it literally like this is like you will own nothing and be happy. This is the, like, all of you, like Tesla, all of you fucking, you know, Elon Musk dick riders and conservative types love to dog on the World Economic Forum for the you will own nothing and be happy, ha ha ha, sort of economic logic, right? Because obviously that's evil as fuck. This is what it looks like. Nobody can afford anything. You can't even own your own groceries. You're now, like, on the hook for that, right? And yeah, obviously, like, it is not a good decision to go into debt for something, right? That means you can't afford it, and like, you know, oh, if you can't afford something, don't buy it. Motherfucker, what if it happens that you can't afford food or medicine? Are you just supposed to die? I know that somebody like you would say, yes, you are supposed to die because you're fundamentally just a misanthrope who hates humanity and you're a pathetic loser who goes and antagonizes a small Twitch streamer online, right? But fundamentally, this is a society destabilizing issue. You've yet to indicate in what way that I'm wrong, aside from just saying that I'm wrong. So I'm inclined to believe that I'm actually correct and you're blowing smoke. It is very characteristic of the fascists to constantly say, nuh-uh. But, you know, because you're not smart enough to actually understand what it is that I'm saying, you also can't articulate what I'm saying that is wrong or why. Nice source, idiot. When you're touting something that says all sides, it's very, you know, I think that's a different color smoke signal than you intend to be sending there. Blowing white smoke? Yes, true. Or black smoke, depending on the not agree with me. No, what they said is that they Google searched the media bias of CNBC and there were votes that it leans left. Every single if you look at the votes, don't worry 1v3, I got you, because this guy doesn't actually know what he's talking about. He just thinks he does. Any media outlet that you look at, even Fox News, is going to be voted as unfair left-leaning by the news media comment section, because the only people that actually care enough to like vote on the media bias of a fucking news outlet are losers like you and fascists. I see they've sort of resorted to the thought-terminating cliches. This discussion isn't really interesting anymore. Here's the deal, right? We can keep him around as long as he doesn't, you know... As long as he doesn't, like, do some genocide apologia or some shit, or say that, like, you know... insert minority group here isn't human, we can keep him around, but 1v3, if he treads into that territory, you can just ban him. Regardless, to get back, I know I kind of let the discussion get derailed. That one's on me a little bit, but you guys understand what I'm saying, right? That like this is you know, it's not good. Regardless of, like, you know, I know that this guy's brain is too poisoned to understand that larger systems exist. And ultimately, even though, like, people still have agency in the decisions that they make, the fact that a disproportionate number of people are being led to certain decisions is bad, right? And that's something that can be systemically corrected for and should be systemically corrected for, you know? I have a job, actually. Thank you. I'm gonna probably let this race finish out, and then I will... Yeah, I imagine if people are buying groceries, they probably also have a job, right? Like, well, probably. You know, everybody needs to buy groceries, so people with and without jobs are also buying groceries. Now, if they're going to debt for them, do you have a source for that, or are you still blowing smoke? I'm gonna... There we go. Ah, dang. Can I still make this? I cannot. Yeah, it was worth a shot. No, got wheelie bumped. Yeah, your source was a right-wing rag, so I dismissed it. You ever get the feeling of sometimes we're fighting an ideology of pure hatred? I mean, you're looking at evidence of that right now, you know? There's nothing going on in this guy's head except for how much he hates me, apparently. Which on a certain level is, like, flattering, but is also, like, very concerning, because this guy clearly has nothing better to do. Like, you seem to care a lot about what I'm saying, in my opinion, because you're still here, right? Methinks thou doth protest too much. Anyways, yeah, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to indulge the humiliation fetish any more than I have to. Let me get to this next, the other thing that I wanted to talk about here. It is another news bias thing. Okay, great. Here. Okay. This time from regular NBC. Okay. This actually made me really mad even just seeing the headline, right? You guys are about to get a, maybe not quite a masterclass, but a, you know, I guess, you know, just a 101 lesson in media bias for how obvious this shit is, right? Trump's third-term talk freezes the potential 2028 Republican field, as a headline from NBC, and then the subheader reads, the more Trump delays, the more he commands, oops, hit the fake item box, the more he commands attention and averts the perception that he's a lame duck. That's pretty true. This really did make me mad when I saw it, because it's like, okay, anybody who knows anything about the law knows that it is on that there might be a rare bit of agreement, Tesla, between you and me. If Vance runs in 2028, there's a very real possibility that he wins, because the Democratic Party has no dick and balls to speak of, and they have no idea what they're doing. But I wanted to talk about the framing of this article, because it's like but those are both also true things. The Dems do suck, and people fucking are tired of them. The issue is, there's where you're wrong. People actually want leftists. They love Bernie and AOC. But regardless, obviously it is against the Constitution for any president to hold a third term in office, right? Like, FDR held a third term, and that was the last time that happened, because they passed a whole ass constitutional amendment so that that didn't happen again, right? And ever since then, nobody's even, like, dared to fucking touch that like, the suggestion that, like, hey, I should run for a third term. Meanwhile, Trump was actually joking about it in the 2020 campaign, when he was running against Joe Biden in the the COVID years, and during the campaign against Kamala Harris. And now it's just, you know, they're just talking about it. And it genuinely irks me that we're only, keep in mind, it's been 3 months since Trump was inaugurated. It's currently April 28th. And like, the news media has already fucking fallen in line with him just deciding, yeah, the constitutional amendment with like, where it says you can only hold 2 terms as president, you know, that doesn't mean anything. I'll just run for a third term anyway, right? And the news media went straight from, oh my God, constitutional crisis, to now them talking about him running for a third term as though it's just the regular sort of horse race politics, which is double infuriating, because I also fucking hate that the news talks about politics like it's a horse race, you know? I've talked about this a couple times on stream before. The fucking politics is a venue of policy that dictates the course of people's lives and whether they live or die. There are policies that have been signed or not signed that has resulted in the deaths of thousands, or has averted the deaths of thousands year over year. You know? And now NBC is like, you know what, fuck it. You know, like, we don't need to worry about the Constitution. You know, fuck that shit. These fucking news outlets are gonna get all of us killed. Like, I hope that people realize that the way that directing the public discourse works means that all of the, like, shit that governments want to do, particularly a fascist government such as this, all of that is only possible if the news media sort of permits it to happen. And this is not just the media permitting it to happen. This is not them kissing the ring. This is them giving, like, aggressive glizzy. You know? Genuinely, I've seen news outlets in authoritarian countries that don't glaze the fucking government and the president this hard. No, Tesla, you seem to misunderstand. They've skipped the fear-mongering stage, you know? They've stopped sensationalizing it in the direction of you should be afraid of this, right? Like, there's a certain framing device that leans into that. This is the horse race politics. This is, ooh, I wonder what'll happen in the 2028 primary. It seems like Trump is still poised to stay on top. This is like the kind of tone that you would strike if you were commentating a sports event, you know? you know, and that is what makes me angry, because it's like you know, it speaks to the complicity of the news media in all of this, right? It's the whole idea of like, oh, it's a big club and we're not in it. NBC and Trump, like the fucking ownership and editing board, like whoever the fuck at NBC, and Donald Trump and the administration are fundamentally all part of the same club. So when it really gets down to it, they're going to they're gonna like side with Trump and their donor daddies. Because again, it's class interest. It's always class interest. And Trump, being part of the oligarch class, is looking out for the interests of other oligarchs by also looking out for his own interests, particularly, right? And so NBC is all too happy to just go along to get along, as is every other news outlet. In fact, in some instances, they're like competing for how hard they can coddle Trump's ballsack. It's very frustrating. NBC attacks Trump daily. Haha, what the fuck are you talking about? They do attack Trump daily. But pay attention to the way that they cover the ways in which he violates the Constitution, right? Like, they'll always say, whenever, like, the government does anything, they'll say, critics say. They always, whenever it's being critical of Trump, whenever it is attacking Trump, they always distance themselves from giving an opinion, right? But they also performatively distance themselves and act like they're being impartial whenever they're talking about things that the government is doing. Critics say this. Proponents say this. They always both sides the issue. There's this fucking brainworm in their head. And all that does, it's constantly give ground to the more aggressive actor in the situation, which is always going to be the far right. So this has led to basically the news media being the enemy of the people. Because they functionally are on the same side as the far right, they constantly cede ground to them. And that results in this. Them covering, you know, the intention of the Trump administration to flagrantly, like, violate the Constitution as though it's just another day in the office. Because, I mean, for them, I guess it is. You know, for the administration, they violate the Constitution like it's toilet paper and they need to wipe their ass, you know? Here, you know what? 1v3. If this guy's still going about something completely not germane to the conversation after this race, you can just ban him. You know. But give him a couple more minutes, right? We'll have yeah, we'll let this race get done, and then if he's still going on about some shit that's just not even relevant, then you can get him out of here. Tesla, you have no fucking idea how patient I've been with you. And I would also like to say a brief, yeah, he's a little bit cute. I would like to say a brief thank you for not going into genocide denialism territory. You seem to know how to behave just enough for me to keep you around. So, you know, that puts you ahead of the other Nazis in your weight class for that one. So, good job. However, you're any given one, really. There's a couple happening right now. Was I talking? You can just ban him for, like, I don't know, spamming, I guess. Spamming, like, way the fuck too much. But again, at the end of the race, you know. Spamming what? Well, I have a general rule. Just, okay. I do want to reach one last olive branch before 1v3, before you ban him. I want to reach one last olive branch to explain why I'm about to ban you, right? Because it's one thing to be very prolific in chat, right? I'm pretty forgiving of that. It's one thing to also use caps lock. Another thing I'm pretty forgiving of, and that you actually haven't done, so thank you. But when I say that, like, you've been spamming way too much, you've been talking a lot about things that just completely aren't germane to the topic of conversation. You don't seem to be engaging with any of the factual things that I'm saying, right? I don't know. I feel like a lot of that just kind of isn't helped by the fact that you're being kind of a retard. Which, I mean, who among us is not a retard? Guilty as charged, sure, but like, see, that's what I mean. It's always like non-specific. I'll allow that one. It's sad that I can hear his keyboard. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Okay, now you can ban him. Just know that I gave you way more leeway than most of the other Nazis that have been in my chat, so, bye, I guess. And scene. Thank you very much. Thank you. Rip indeed. Rip to a fallen brother. He still didn't understand. Look, I mean, yeah, rest in pieces. At this point, I'll fucking take over under odds on whether that guy is like was even real. Fuck. There have been enough bots in my chat from time to time. You guys remember 1v3? You might remember when, like, right after the October 7th attacks, when Israel started just bombing the shit out of Gaza, when like all those fucking IDF chat bots would show up in like the live stream chat and constantly say about like Palestinians are all animals and whatever. God, some of the shit that they say sounds tame by comparison. Yeah. To what they say now. Yeah, back to leftist paradise, leftist chat room on twitch.tv, many such cases. That's a fake item box. I almost drove straight into that. And also a mod. Come and stream from Israel? A mod? Oh yeah, Gotron. It kind of got drowned out by that guy's ramblings. But yeah, I saw that you joined Progressive Victory in your message earlier. Great job. And, we salute a leftist patriot, the Sons of the Patriots or something, Metal Gear. Yeah, I'm also a member of Progressive Victory. In fact, I've been a member ever since the organization was created back in 2022, I think. W's, boys, thank you. Didn't join earlier because my brain makes me think stuff is more difficult than it actually is. Yeah, I have that problem too. Sometimes it's like, I don't know if it's ADHD or autism or depression or any sort of like cocktail in there, but sometimes like you make a mountain out of a molehill and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do the thing. You do it and it's like not that bad. So that's good. So congrats. And I'm like, what was wrong with me? Many such cases. My mom joined the death, the death. Yes, that's true. The death biker gang. Okay. The Dutch Left Party and our local authority. Nice. We love to see people getting involved at the local level. That's the change that tends to last, stuff at the local and state or regional level. That stuff is really hard to get like overturned when you actually do it. Like a progressive policy at a local level whether it's like, oh yeah, we gave more funding to this school here from the local council, or like, to this affordable housing program or whatever, or to this like precisely because it's less vulnerable to the structures that manufacture consent, right? It's like a little bit more materially close to where people actually live. So when a lot of times consent will be manufactured for these big abstract sounding things, but then people will look at something that's actually pretty similar on the local level and they'll be like, well, that's different though. You know, kind of like with trans people, with immigrants or whatever, with queer people, it's like, oh man, those immigrants and trans people are ruining the country. But my trans son is pretty cool, and I love him. And you know, my neighbor Jorge, he works at the shop down the street, and he's all right. You know, he's a good guy. It's like that. Oops. Not that our local rules have been bad. On the levels that the USA had a lot of Europe is experiencing right now. Yet the more the merrier. Yeah, the more the merrier. He had a mushroom. Okay. You know, and in fact, it like some Republicans are like Trump and nothing else. Yeah, and that's kind of the one of the fatal flaws that the Republicans have at the local level. At least the ones that are really all in, is that they're so national politics pilled that they kind of flounder at the local level. You know, they'll have some success at the state level, but you know. And another thing that I wanted to touch on, why local activism is really important, again, something that I need to do more of, I think, you know, many people need to do more of, but can speak for myself, is that, you know, not only is it a little bit further away from the artifice of manufacturing consent, think of how people would react if one day, you know, all the, like, the ABC, the NBCs of the world, the Foxes and the CNNs started manufacturing the consent for something at a local level that people ubiquitously viewed as good, right? Like, imagine if, you know, maybe they've been sufficiently bought off by the auto industry or whatever, and then they just decide, you know what, got some donors in the auto industry, or like some people who are executives at these companies. We're gonna start a crusade against public transit at the local level. Imagine what people's reaction would be if they turn on the news and they start hearing them talk about like how oh yeah, your bus lanes and train stations are horrible, actually. That's commie shit, you know? Like, imagine you turn on fucking CNN and they're whinging about some, you know, opponents of the local train system in New York City says that it's too dirty and like, I don't know. Then they sort of twist that into justifying like defunding it even more and getting rid of it, right? I feel like people wouldn't react very well to the, like, literally local, like, political amenities being threatened. Imagine not having a great train system since you're America. Yeah, indeed. No need to remind me, but yes. The one place in the United States that actually does have a decent urban rail system is New York. New York is known in the United States for having a subway system that is maybe not as good as any given place in Europe, but like good enough for basically everybody to use it to commute to work every day. And that's why New York is probably like the cultural capital of the United States, because it has like an urban identity like that, you know? Yeah, there's a reason that autistic people fucking love trains. I'm just getting away from this guy. I don't want any piece of that. Actually are awesome. Yes, trains are sick. Even the train, like, even when trains suck, they're still cool. Like, I remember a few years ago. I'll get to the CARE Act in a second. I don't think I've heard much about it. I remember a few years ago, I went to my friend's college graduation. Guy that I've been friends with for a long time. You know, more than half my life at this point, I think. And he went to my college graduation a few years ago, and so I think it was the year after he went to my college graduation, I went to his college graduation, and I remember I the way I did it was I took the train down to my granddad's house, or not to my granddad's house. Took the train down to Charlottesville, right? Yeah, Charlottesville is in Virginia. Charlotte is in North Carolina. And he picked me up there, and the train sucked. You know, it was not well maintained. It was pretty slow, but it was shorter than taking the car there, and it was fun to just ride on the train. Riding on the train was just a fun time for me. You know, I had a nice like soft pretzel, and I was reading a book, and it was a good time. Choo choo equals W. Yes. That's so true. In fact, I remember when I was little, I watched a lot of Thomas the Tank Engine. And I had all those like wooden Thomas the Tank Engine train sets. I would play with those all the time. I loved that shit. Because you could build your own like train tracks and stuff. But now, the CARE Act. What is this? It had a huge train track system? Yes. What is the CARE Act? Here we go. Wikipedia. CARE Act. Child Abuse Reform and Enforcement Act is a U.S. law. Now my cat just sits on the tracks. True. Dude, I've seen those videos on YouTube of the, like, guys in Japan that have these big, like, electric train sets, and there's, like, it's always a video like, oh, my cat is sitting on the train tracks, and he's trying to play with the train, and it's, like, a camera from the train's POV, and then you see the cat is sitting on the train tracks, and it's like, is that a mouse? Is that a toy? And like, they like swipe at it and stuff. Might have misremembered. It's the one about voting. Oh, the Save Act. Yes, I have, I know of that act. I don't know what status it is at right now. I know that the last time I talked about it, it had passed the House of Representatives. If it passed the Senate, then, you know, we're cooked. And that's basically going to be my analysis of it. Wish real life worked at internet speed. I have mixed thoughts. I don't know. The convenience sure is nice, though. I will say that. I'm gonna chain this. What's up? Okay. I'm in an okay position, I think. Earlier this week, my brother, thank you, gave me code for Minecraft and download it. Computers. Seen cube with rainbow colors. Whoa, what? It's crazy. Spin. It's actually terrifying. Search engine for mods. Oh, yeah. I have a thing like that. It's I use CurseForge, I think, to search for mods and like mod packs and stuff. Here, let's see. Save Act. HR 22, 119th Congress, Save Act. Okay, this is congress.gov. We can actually see the status of the bill here. Summary text. Actions. Weird default skin with pink hair, and was like, no, and then downloaded a skin of dragon humanoid. That sounds like a weird, like, mod browser. I don't know, I guess I dig it. As long as it doesn't, like, give you a virus or some shit. Yeah. Okay. On passage, pass yeas and nays 220, 208. Okay, pass the House of Representatives. Received in the Senate. So, okay. It looks from the Congress.gov website, what it looks like is the bill is currently, for the SAVE Act, is sitting in the Senate. It has passed the House. Basically, same kind of status as when I last looked at it. It's sitting in the Senate, and no actions have been taken on it yet. You know, it hasn't been formally deliberated upon. There haven't been any amendments attached or brought to the floor or anything like that. So it may still be some time before we know basically whether married women in America, like, lose the right to vote over it or something. On that note, though, I actually don't know fully the life expectancy of a bill. Like, before the Senate or the House, like, tends to lose interest in it and stuff. I don't know. Life is Strange games. They have some goofy stuff that happens. Life is Strange. I have not heard of those. What kind of, like... What kind of game is it? Oh, dude, that guy's on the fucking flame flyer? This game's like a mystery where you found out you have time travel powers with some slice of life. Oh, that sounds fun. Sometimes I'll indulge in like a small, God, almost like a visual novel experience. Kind of like what was it? The Test, where it's got some like ominous elements to it. I don't know. And I got second somehow. Some people hate it because it's not perfect. Well, you know, every game has its haters, you know. You find a game that was named Game of the Year, like everybody loves it, you find somebody that hates it. You know, Portal 2, universally loved, for the most part, by, like, gaming communities. And, you know, somebody out there hates it, because, you know, there do be professional haters in this world. Portal 2 DLC has the most messed up ending. There was DLC for Portal 2? Oh, wait. Is that like the co-op mode? Yeah, the co-op mode. Oh, man, that brings back memories. I actually played the co-op mode when I was like 11 or 12 years old with a friend of mine in middle school. I went over to his house and he had Portal 2. This is what introduced me to the game, actually. We played Portal 2 co-op mode. And yeah, the ending to that game is fucked up. God damn. Spoilers incoming for anybody who hasn't played Portal 2. Game's ancient by video game standards. Came out in 2010, 11. What were you thinking when you saw it the first time, when you were at that age? I don't know that I was thinking much of anything other than, like, yeah, we did it, because the last level was hard. Like, that's about, you know, you think about, like, you know, when I think back to, like, fucking, I don't know, 12-year-old me, that's probably what was on my mind, you know? But then, like, when I saw, like, basically when I started to develop more, like, ethical consciousness, like, understanding of how to, identify things that would like abstractly or less abstractly violate like an ethical code. With like, oh yeah, you can recognize more complex right and wrong in more obscure scenarios or scenarios that like might not have registered as a kid. I looked at I remember seeing like a full playthrough of the co-op mode on YouTube, and then at the very end I was like, wow, that's fucked up. You know, and this was when I was in like high school. I was like, wow, okay, they just have a whole fucking giant like nuclear vault door closet of human test subjects all in stasis or whatever. You know? And GLaDOS is super happy about it, and all the robots are like high-fiving each other for it. It's like, yeah, we did it. Funnily enough, the robots were pretty close to how my like 12-year-old self thought about that the end of the game. They were just like, yeah, we did it. It was great, dude. But then at the same time that I realized, like, wow, that's pretty fucked up, the humor also set in for me, because like Portal and Portal 2 are very much, they have like black comedy elements. Your main characters die, I think. Yeah, I think so. They like get blown up. You know? Which is not too uncommon of a thing in the game, so that wasn't the part that super stuck out to me. Right? Like, what made it like both fucked up and also funny at the same time is the tonal contrast between the really happy music, the robots high-fiving and dancing, and GLaDOS being like, you did it, you guys are great, and then there's all these fucking like lifeless human body silhouettes in these test tubes and stuff. You know? It felt very Portal 2. You know? And I was kind of like, man, that's fucked up. But then also in context, oh, haha, Portal 2 is such a goofy game, smiley face. So yeah, that was my thoughts on the Portal 2 DLC. Remember when Valve made video games? I do remember that, and they were bangers. Portal 2, Team Fortress 2. Oh. Left 4 Dead also. I never really played Left 4 Dead, but I had some friends that played it, and it looked like a fun time. Planning on getting Nintendo Switch 2? Yes, sorry. I forgot about that message earlier, but I did see it. I think I am planning on getting the Nintendo Switch 2. I want to see what the, like, obviously I want to see what the post-tariff price tag is, and then that might affect my decision to, I don't know, pre-order it or buy it or whatever, right? Dude, funnily enough, Mario Kart World stream? True. I would stream Mario Kart World, probably. Funnily enough, it would be really funny if, like, potentially buying the Switch in a different country were less expensive than buying it here. Because then what I might potentially be inclined to do is, like, I don't know, depending on how soon that opportunity happens. It's like, wait till it's like, oh yeah, we're going to visit family in this country, and then I just buy a Switch when I'm there. You know? And so then I have like a fucking like a Moroccan copy of the Switch 2 or some shit whenever, like, you know, countries start getting the Switch 2 outside of Japan and that sort of thing. I don't know. It's not, again, that's not super likely in my mind, but it's funny that that's now, like, potentially a thought in my mind now that it's, like, gonna probably be, like, really expensive in America. But if it's not horrible, I might, like, buy it anyway, because I've been, like, you know, you guys know I just talked about, like, how frugal I am and I don't fucking spend money on anything. That would be one of the few things that I would be actually interested in spending money on. Because it means new Mario Kart game, potentially new Smash Bros. Game when that comes out, and it, you know, I think it'd be worth it. be $1,000 for anybody in the US. It's funny because as you said that, I was actually thinking that, like, I wonder, it might, you know, go from the neighborhood of $450 to probably somewhere like $1,000 or potentially more. I'll have to see. Here, switch to pre-order USA. Oh, that's actually not all that bad. I'm seeing a couple like markups to 600 some bucks, which is not a huge departure from a like 450 bucks price tag. Tariffs are confusing everyone. Yeah, I suppose so. Guess I gotta buy it now while the tariffs are still confusing and not entirely disastrous yet. Left for with mods I made of all the survivors, hell of boss characters. Nice. You need to have played for 2 years. Me and my bro got 1.6 years. Wait, what? Is that a requirement or something? What's going on? Oh, hell of a boss. Oh, yeah. Okay. For fucking Left 4 Dead or something. Yeah. The tank from Left 4 Dead. Oh, the fucking Pillar Man. Yeah. The tanks in Left 4 Dead were the fucking JoJo's Pillar Men. That's fucking great. I love that. Love me Hell of a Boss. My chat, a lot of people in my chat seem to have, like, at various points have expressed that they really like Hell of a Boss. And I think Has Been Hotel, too. But I think they're made by the same creator. Maybe I should watch them. Maybe. I don't know. Oh, yeah. As it stands, that reminded me of, like, stuff that I have watched. Yes. Okay. But maybe that'll be the next thing, you know? Yes. JoJo's reference while talking about Hell of a Boss cinema. Yeah, okay. The last thing that I watched, Pilot is not canon. Okay, noted. I wanted to talk a little bit about some media that I had watched recently. All of my... Hey, you don't need to throw your 82,000 channel points at me to make me do that. I'll probably do that on my own, you know? I wanted to also watch Andor. I might do that first because I think May 13th is the date of the last episode airing, so I'll probably go through that and then, like... then I'll start on the next series, which would be like Hell of a Boss or Has Been or something. What I wanted to talk about was yesterday I watched Nosferatu. I've talked a little bit about how I wanted to watch Nosferatu, the 2024 version, and I actually did watch it yesterday. And holy shit, that movie. Jesus. I actually really appreciate it because it's a horror movie that's really watchable for me. The horror in it is not really like in the form of jump scares. Sounds like a Harry Potter spell. True Harry Potter sounding as. Well, I mean the original movie came out in 1922, so you know, maybe Harry Potter spells just sound like fucking weird Romanian vampires. I saw some trailers. What was it about again? Nosferatu is a movie about a vampire. It's about a vampire who is like truly is kind of like a lich and like extremely old, looks a lot like a cadaver in both versions. What I'm describing is common to both versions, and becomes infatuated with this German woman. Uh, um, and sort of like it's like a story about her being ensnared in vice, and by vice I mean sexuality. Yeah, he's like a creepy old man. But what's interesting is, lest this end up on a fucking NSFW website with the ugly bastard and rape tags, there's actually a point emphasized in the movie that, like, no, I do want her, I seek after her, but she must give herself willingly. You know? It, like, none of this can be done without her explicit permission. If she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to. And that's like a running theme throughout the movies. She's trying to, like, control herself into not giving into these, like, vampiric urges or whatever. Yeah, the fucking character that cares, like, explicitly cares a lot about consent is a weird, creepy old vampire from Romania. You know. Shoutouts. Very sexed up movie. In more ways than one. You know? And it is also very characteristic of a German story of the time, right? I think the story itself of Nosferatu actually predates the movie by some time. And it is very, like, you can kind of tell because it's a very, very depressing sort of movie in the sort of environment that it, in the environments that you frequently see in it. Like, old castles, and like a lot of the tropes of vampire movies were kind of established by the story of Nosferatu in the early 20s, and then the 2024 movie remains, I think, pretty faithful to some of that, where like the old castles, the rundown winter village, a lot of the color scheme is very blue and gray and like white, of like smoke and industrial gray brick and like gloomy outside weather. And the one time that that's not the case, the one time that you see warm colors, it's the color of fire, you know, in an isolated fireplace or on a stick, like on a brazier or a torch. Yeah, literally, like this is where Castlevania gets its inspiration from. And where actually anything having to do with vampires and that sort of subgenre of the occult, a lot of that gets its inspiration from Nosferatu or some derivative of that. And of course, obviously not to say derivative as though it's like a bad thing, right? Yes, let's go. Me and GCN both dodged a shock because we're fucking sick nasty with it. Oh, do we both have triple, or not triple, golden mushroom? Top 2, baby! I think these vampires are... the conservative propaganda. I actually don't think that it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know that the movie, like, necessarily skews in an ideological direction. I mean, because it's art, I would say that, like, it skews in the direction of being, like, you know, leftist propaganda, if anything. But also, I do think that there is a critical thing that precludes it from being conservative propaganda, and that is consent, because conservatives fucking hate consent. Maybe you could make the argument that, like, the vampire is like, she must give herself willingly. That's what he sounds like, by the way, in the movie. Is like the conservative image of, like, the bad guy or whatever, but ultimately it's like, you know, consent is good, I guess. That's pretty good, I think. I don't know. You know, I think there actually is some, ideological leaning that potentially can get lost in translation for the modern world, which is that the main characters come from a more modern German social order, which would have been the sort of early to middle stage capitalism of the 19th century, you know? Well-to-do men who make an honest living being merchants or workmen under these other you know, well-learned bureaucrats and stuff like that, right? Whereas the vampire, who is, you know, portrayed as the villain of the story, they do some, like, in addition to being extremely sexed up and actually very concerned with consent, they do some heinous shit. But the vampire is depicted as a sort of remnant, a decaying cadaver remnant of the old feudal order. A very arcane and Byzantine system of rules, you know, that favors these blood connections for I guess people that would have like one foot in the grave. Whereas the sort of the image of like city life, of vibrant like social life and making merry and laughing and toasting and whatever, and you know, men doing the men things and having wife, you know, like a healthy life is sort of depicted in the modernity of a tightly knit urban society, where the old feudal order is put in stark contrast as a very backwards and superstitious peasantry that is kept in such a state by a very isolated and like you know, just fucking weird lord of a castle, you know. So that's an element that I think you could read into it, is that like it is a like it has that sort of class dimension to it, where the old feudal ruling class is like a sort of haunting supernatural specter that threatens to undercut the positive underpinnings of modern life or something like that, you know. But that's I think a Marxist reading, literally in the sense that it doesn't necessarily pertain directly to the characters, except for I think the like Nosferatu himself, the vampire. You imagine if Republicans were vampires, it would be a strict upgrade. They already do like the heinous shit, the like, you know, unleashing the plague rats upon the city and stripping back all the fucking social safety nets and putting people in a state of perpetual fear and paranoia and anxiety, and you know, targeting the rights of women and shit like that. But they don't care about consent, and quite frankly, I've yet to see a Republican that has any sort of sex appeal. However, I have seen a vampire that is very sexy. Not in Nosferatu, not the one in that movie. Nuh-uh, no can do. But there are other vampire movies where the vampires are sexy, and, you know, I wouldn't mind getting a piece of that. Or them, in fact, getting a piece of me. You know. They'll both kill you, but with the Republicans, you don't get to come back to life afterwards. So. When my mom was alive, she liked Twilight. I feel like the well has been so poisoned on Twilight that I don't even know what to think of it. Like, as a broader story thing. Like, all of us shat on it in middle school and high school and whatever, but like, I think that was just because it was like, at its core, I think like a lot of that was made up post hoc because it's like media mostly meant for women, you know, where it's like it wasn't super concerned with whether it appealed to guys, and that was what led a lot of guys to hate it. And, you know, obviously in like middle and high school, that discourse was ever present for me because of the time that I was in, like the time period where I was in middle and high school. But I genuinely don't know like what I would think of it on the whole now. Pretty far behind here, looks like. Let me chain this. Golden mushroom? Okay. Shock dodge? Yes. Give me these mushrooms. No, pal. Okay, that's probably fine. I gained some ground either way. But yeah, Nosferatu. Very interesting movie. The cast for that movie was stacked. I'm not gonna lie. And obviously, I think it is worth a watch. The horror in that movie, very not jump scare reliant, which I appreciate. It was very built on the feeling of discomfort and dread, and making what's his face feel very imposing, which is the kind of horror that I actually quite like. You know, I feel like for the most part I've done my best to sort of talk about what I liked about it without like giving any spoilers. So, because the movie's still pretty recent, so you know, so watch it if you can / if you want. No, I fucked up the POW dodge. Somebody get hit by that? That would suck if somebody got hit by that. One time Zootopia had drama because someone made an abortion comic. I think I vaguely remember that. But even at the time, I was like, why is that a big deal? It's one person made it probably extremely fucking cringe comic. That's not really any business of mine, and also I don't think pertains directly to the source material itself. You know? I mean, like, look, it's not like it was the Typhlosion story, because that did have a direct relationship to the source material, you know? Judy Hopps gets assassinated president style? Oh, so you mean her head just did that? Zero shooter theory. Nobody shot... nobody fired a shot. His head just did that. Her head just did that. Judy Hopps, in this case. Damn, that's fucked up. Yeah, okay. The insane musings of one individual. Last thing. Okay. This will be the last race. This is also the last thing I wanted to talk about. That I remembered. Dorless Blue has a giant shell from Pokemon. You mean, Blastoise? Or are you talking about Caracosta? Also, you can tell how much that how much of a fucking nerd I am for Pokemon, because I remember, both of those just off the top of my head. Oh, Lapras. Yeah. I don't think it's a turtle. I think it's like a... It's the Loch Ness Monster. Yeah. Yeah, what about Lapras? It do be given fucking bedroom eyes in his sprite or something. What I missed? We're talking about... I talked about Nosferatu. I finally watched that movie. Worry about one, looked at it and says I want to smash. Yeah, that's probably what I thought. I will say this though, as far as people who find, like, who are into that shit, like with Pokemon, anybody who's into Lapras like that, they have taste. Whether it's good taste or not, I will not elaborate on, but it's not completely tasteless. The day one Game Freak got horny, that's true. And I win. Nice. Okay, last thing, for real. I'm not going to do any more Race is the same. You saw the Pokemon sentient? Yeah, in the, like... There was a period of time where people were doing the, like, smash or pass with Pokemon. And the assumption, obviously... Everybody went into this with a certain set of assumptions that the Pokemon are, like, sentient and have, like, roughly adult person level of intelligence. So it's not like you're doing some extremely fucked up shit. It's like, okay, in this hypothetical scenario, they're intelligent to the degree that they can give consent and all that. Which one's picked from Hell of a Boss? Oh. Oh, you are right. I think. Right. Wait, no, not this picture. Different. Something else. Okay. This is going to be... You guys remember how there's like the one time that I fucking talked about Street Fighter? Get ready for another autistic Street Fighter rant. Again, it is about Ryu. Because I fucking love Ryu. He's my boy. He's my main dude. Seriously, I play him in every Street Fighter game. So I talked the other time I talked about his donkey kick, the one where he like say yeah and kicks you like across the screen. Super fucking cool move, by the way. Now I'm talking about a different kick. I'm all about them kicks, I guess. He has like I guess the old school Street Fighter people will call it short forward and roundhouse, but it's light kick, medium kick, and heavy kick. And for Ryu, it's apt that it's called roundhouse, because in most Street Fighters, it is literally a roundhouse kick, you know? You guys probably know what that looks like. You know? But in one Street Fighter game, it's actually not. It's not a roundhouse kick. And that's Street Fighter V. For whatever reason, in Street Fighter V, Ryu's heavy kick is different. But they changed it back in Street Fighter 6. In every Street Fighter game, except for 5, his heavy kick is he just does a roundhouse kick, you know, and obviously, like, that makes sense. And it's not like his heavy kick, that same kick doesn't, like, make sense or anything, but it's substantially different, right? Instead of him doing the roundhouse motion, he moves his leg the other way, like... the other way. Like, instead of moving his leg this way, like you would with a roundhouse kick, he moves his leg up and this way. Up and in. Right? So, like, you picture his right leg is sort of in front of him like this. It goes up and over like that. Right? In front of him. And that's the kind of kick that he does in Street Fighter V. It still functions the same way. It's, like, out for the same amount of time. And it, like, covers the same area in front of him, right? So it's not functionally really different. But it's kind of weird to me that they changed the kind of kick and the animation for Street Fighter V and nothing else. And just then, like, went back to it. I don't know. I don't know. You notice fighting games have been trying harder and harder to spend more and more money per next game. I have noticed there's a little bit of like a blockbuster effect with fighting games where it's like this is for a lot of games, but yeah, fighting games, particularly the main series one, your King of Fighters, your Street Fighters, your Mortal Kombats, and your like Guilty Gears and whatever else. It like has to be bigger and better than the last one. They can never make one that's just kind of smaller. Like, Street Fighter 3 was actually a little smaller than Street Fighter 2. But ever since then, it's always had to be, like, bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. You really need motion capture? I guess, I mean, the motion capture element of that, I think, was fine. It depends on the art style. They actually did motion capture for Street Fighter 3. Did you guys know that? Faces, they like really went detailed for it. Oh yeah, that. I kind of appreciate the art style, but I do see what you're getting at, that like they constantly, it's like they dive into realism more and more. I don't know if Street Fighter is going to continue with that. There are some fighting games that have pulled back and decided like, okay, we had our time doing like the realistic thing, now let's go a little bit more stylized and whatever. It does seem like that's kind of like a market pressure for like investors or whatever. You know how like when you're in a pitch meeting or something like that, the investors like, we want to, we want to see bigger and better and sharper and crisper and more realistic and whatever. And that's the kind of stuff that tends to draw investment in a game, because these are still companies that have to get capital investment and stuff like that in order to have the funds to develop the game. It's like a private marketplace, and that's one of the issues, is that sometimes you get pushed in certain directions that you might not otherwise want to, because there's some lizard person with ungodly amounts of money but has an IQ of 12, you know? Often you look at the face. Not super often, yeah. I don't know. Me personally, I like the way that Street Fighter 6 looks, but I wouldn't want every fighting game to look like that. Especially because Street Fighter 3 is super stylized. I mean, just fucking look at Guile's hair, right? You're throwing fucking fireballs and doing uppercuts that jump 10 feet in the air and whatever. Like, not every game with that has to look realistic. But I'm fine with one looking realistic. Spent a lot of money in development time on it. Yeah, and that's because it's a big fighting game franchise. And they kind of had to. And it paid off with Street Fighter 6, because they made it very, like, casual gaming accessible, right? Although there's also, like, one flaw that kind of inhibits that, and that is how poorly optimized the game is. Like, you need a pretty good computer in order to run it. That's one of the shortfalls, I think. And one of the issues with having, like, obsessing over, like, making it super fucking realistic and sharp and whatever, is it, like, now you need a goddamn supercomputer. Hot take, we're gonna reach the cap for fighting games soon. I don't know. I don't know if I agree. I see the concerns there. But at the same time, I feel like fighting games is one of the, it's one of the, like, sub-industries of games that I don't know enough about to know, like, the historical trend of whether it's going to, like, fall off plus L plus ratio. If anything, it seems like they've reached a new audience here. Yes, I have heard Vosh's take where it's, like, recycle content over and over, and, like, the fundamental game principles aren't very different. That's what keeps me from playing other fighting games, is that, like, I like the roster of characters in Street Fighter enough to justify buying more than one Street Fighter game. But fundamentally, from game to game, I'm still playing Street Fighter. Sometimes the core mechanics do change enough for it to feel like a different game. For example, even though they are both fighting games, and you can rely on fighting game fundamentals to get by, and they also scratch a very similar itch in your brain, Street Fighter 3 and Street Fighter 6 are pretty different games, you know? Like, if you're good at Street Fighter 6, that isn't going to directly translate into being good at Street Fighter 3. But because they're both fighting games, you rely on a very similar set of fundamentals, you know? You know, there's a reason the genre is called fighting games. People got really mad at him because of that. And I think it's just because it's like, Vosh uses very contentious sounding terms to phrase his arguments in his media takes, and people get defensive whenever it sounds like, because sometimes he might actually be attacking their choice to purchase, like, multiple games in, like, the Street Fighter series or King of Fighters or whatever. But I feel like it's fine if you understand, like, yeah, you know, Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 6 are going to structurally be, like, pretty similar. Yeah, and I think ultimately it's a skill issue if you get offended. Like, yeah, Street Fighter 5 and 6 aren't, like, fundamentally different games. Like, the fundamental core gameplay experience, like, there's a very, very basic gameplay experience. Like, from one Mario Kart to the next, I'm not going to argue that it's, like, you know, so different that it's not even Mario Kart or something like that. No, it's still Mario Kart. It's a kart racing game, right? With items and whatever. Even though Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart Wii feel very different, both still Mario Kart. Yeah. Yeah, I feel a pretty similar way. Put a blindfold on, someone would be able to tell the difference if they were authentically with each detail. I mean, if somebody was an aficionado of the game, then they're like, yeah, you put a blindfold on me, I would definitely be able to tell the difference between Mario Kart Wii, Mario Kart 7, Mario Kart 8. You know? Oh, yeah. The average person, though, yeah, no. Like you sit down an average person in front of a Street Fighter and they wouldn't know which Street Fighter it was, nor would they probably care. But they would know, like, oh yeah, Street Fighter. Or same with Mario Kart. So, anyways, that's 20 minutes more than I was originally thinking I wanted to stream today. But we had a good discussion. We almost made a new friend. But you know, he didn't like us very much, so we had to say goodbye to him. Well, I mean, that's not why we had to say goodbye to him. That was different, but he also didn't like us very much, so it is what it is. Don't worry about it. I'll be back. I know there was a much larger gap between the past couple streams than I like wanted there to be. Hopefully I'll be back soon. Test subject 7,589. That's true. Yeah, this is actually extremely unethical stream. Don't get me shut down by the government, but we are running experiments with human test subjects. And by human test subjects, I mean some crazy right-wing weirdo voluntarily comes into the chat and like vomits all over their keyboard for 10 minutes before they get banned for like violating the rules. All right. Hassan, the Hasanabi broadcast is live. Look, I know we disagree. We all know that we disagree with his Ukraine takes. We don't talk about that too much because, you know, it's rare to get a genuine political commentator. You know, the people bring up that, like, Hassan's international politics takes are not all there, and I agree. But he has good domestic commentary. He's charismatic and funny, I think. And he is, to my knowledge, not actually getting paid by Russia or anything. His opinions are all his own. So I'm going to raid Azan. His head is also small and his body is big, and that's funny. So also that. And also Cody isn't live, so that's why I'm raiding Hassan instead of Cody Schwab. Like with both. Yes, exactly. You take what you can get, you know? All right. I'll see you guys next time. Yeah, Pope Francis. All right, bye.